Hello, this is African View with me, Yodit Admasu. Today we are going to talk about a very interesting subject, especially for the women. It's about African fashion. And to discuss with me about fashion in Africa and its progress are two fashion experts. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. Shall I start with Hortense?
Okay, Yodit, thank you. So my name is Hortense Mbea. I'm originally from Cameroon, but I've been more or less adopted by Ethiopia. So this has become my home. I've been living here on and off for 12 years. And a few years ago, I started this fashion accessory, lifestyle, actually, a lifestyle brand that's Pan-African. And that focuses a lot on Ethiopia, but tries to blend it with the rest of the continent. And the brand is called Afropian. It's a play on words, Afro-Ethiopian.
And Mahalit?
Thank you, Yodit, for having me here. My name is Mahalit Taklamariam. I'm the founder and organizer of an event called Hub of Africa Fashion Week. It's an annual event that promotes the African fashion industry and which is based here in Addis Ababa.
Okay, thank you guys. Shall we start off by talking about the fashion industry, how it has evolved over the years? What are the kind of trends that we see with the fashion that's flowing?
So just to give you a little background of Hub of Africa and why we started it, this was back in 2010. I ran this idea with my former partner, who was Kenyan. There are fashion weeks. I grew up in the States, so I know about fashion weeks in New York and Europe, you name it, everywhere. But at the time, in 2009-10, I didn't know of any other fashion weeks here in Africa. So I said, why don't we, have a fashion week here? And she loved the idea. She said, yeah, let's do it. So the whole idea was not just to do a catwalk runway, but we always had side events like panel discussions on, building the African fashion industry and so forth. So this is how the whole Hub of Africa started in 2010. Since then, we've been organizing for the first 2-3 events. It was biannual. But since 2014, we've managed to organize it annually. And now we've set it in October, we had to look at all the calendars of other fashion weeks taking place so we don't clash, because at the end of the day, we wanted it to have that caliber where we can invite some international medias, but if it conflicts with Milan and Paris and New York Fashion Week, they will not be able to attend. And same thing with buyers and so forth. So I think with this platform, we've created something to brand African designers. And there are quite a few that we've featured in the past, close to 100 designers until now, but from all over the region, from Kenya, South Africa, Morocco, Tanzania, you name it, everywhere. So it is growing, definitely. And I think Hortense can add more into that as a designer, some of the...
No, I do agree that it is growing. I think that we can only call it a fashion industry if it's kind of organized, and it is getting organized. There's always been fashion in Africa, but how well were we organized? How well were we marketing our style and branding the continent, etc.? So this is something that's changing now, that we are branding African fashion. There is such a thing as African fashion now. Before it was more like, you would design something at home, give it to your tailor in the neighborhood, he would make you the dress, and that was it. We didn't really have so many platforms and so many opportunities, but this is really evolving, and it's very exciting for a designer because there are so many opportunities and avenues now for fashion, African fashion. There's so much attraction and interest in African fashion nowadays.
Okay, one of the things that were kind of hindering the fashion industry from before is that it's not accessible. It's not something that you wear on every day. So has it changed with the color, with the style? For example, the dress that you are wearing right now, it's accessible. It's more, something that you can wear every day. But before it was not like that. So with the fashion evolving, has these things changed? Are they contributing to the fact that people are now more interested in African designs and African dresses?
I don't really agree. I don't think that it wasn't accessible. I think it was always accessible. When I was a kid growing up, I grew up in Europe and the States as well, but when I would come back to Africa on vacation, all of the women in the streets were wearing African fabric, African designs. They were going to work, they were at home. They would wear, like for any occasion, you could have African fashion. I think it was always accessible.
I think it's mainly for Ethiopian fashion. I think it was mainly custom made, and you wear it on, weddings and special occasions. And that's definitely changing. Why? Because there are a lot of new designers that are making ready to wear. They're opening up shops. There are a lot of schools, institutions, fashion design schools that are making, ready to wear. So it is definitely changing. But yes, that was the case, I think, in Ethiopia. Yeah, it's, the ones that you see wear at church, going to church, it's either the netala or, it's usually for occasions. But definitely that has changed even in Ethiopia.
So what about Hub of Africa? Is it, do you think it's contributing? Especially when I have taken part in 2 or 3 of your annual events, and in those I have seen international designers taking part. Chief editor-in-chiefs of Vogue was there at one time. Are these big names in the international arena? Are they contributing to the popularity of African fashion, African designs?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like you
and
mentioned,
how did you how did you manage to bring them here?
Amazing partners, local partners. The Italian embassy was our partner to bring in Vogue Italia back in 2014. It was the first coverage we got from Vogue Italia. But they have this initiative called Vogue Talents, and it's worldwide. So again, through different local NGO partners and other international partners, we were able to get, Vogue Italia to cover our events. We've also had Women's Wear Daily, which is another big magazine and so forth, media. We've had Fashion TV cover the event. So definitely, the designers are getting the exposure. The promotion is there, meaning people are aware of African fashion now, worldwide, and they've been invited to other international platforms to showcase their collections. And they're getting small orders here and there by participating at these small, big events. There are some designers that have participated in the African New York Fashion Week, Berlin Fashion Week. Even as we speak this week, we have designers taking part at the Berlin Fashion Week from Ethiopia. So definitely it is creating that at least platform for them to showcase their work internationally as well. And they are getting some orders, I believe, from these exposures and so forth.
What about hotels? What do you think is contributing to the popularity of African fashion nowadays?
I think African fashion was always popular. We've always inspired the whole world, even though maybe they didn't state it clearly, but we've always inspired fashion and influenced fashion worldwide. I mean, a few years ago, Stella McCartney had a line of dresses made in African fabric that she would sell. I mean, those dresses sell in Africa for maybe $50 maximum. She would sell them for $2,000. Recently, Christian Dior launched his cruise collection, and that was really interesting because it was mostly African fabrics that he used. And what I loved about it was that there was a collaboration between him and an African fabric company called Woodin from Ivory Coast. So they designed the fabrics for him. So there was a partnership, there was a collaboration, it was an equal to equal relationship. But most of the time what they do is that they take so many ideas and fabrics and inspiration and styles from Africa, and they don't give us the credit for it. But we've always been at the center of fashion in the whole world.
So we have been the inspiration behind international designs.
Quite often, there's always it's not all the time, it's not constant, but on and off, you see these African fabrics coming back, our prints coming back, our designs coming back. There was this issue a few years back also with, I think it was American Outfitters, that actually stole an Ethiopian dress. Like they copied exactly to the T that dress. It was this white Nutella dress with the cross in the front, and they marketed it without, crediting Ethiopia for it.
So how do you control? I mean, Africans were really poor. We need to benefit from these kinds of things. So how do we control our trademark, our identity? Like you said, if an American company takes our design, our identity, and takes it, brands it as its own, how do we protect ourselves?
Oh, we fight. I think Ethiopia fought beautifully. It was Urban Outfitters actually that stole that design, and I mean there was a huge
social media as well. People
there was a whole campaign. Yeah. People got mobilized.
But then for your question, how do we protect? I mean, that's a tough one. I don't know. because even some of these designers, having a copyright, they have their own issue being copied locally. Forget, international. Locally, they have issues where they're very keen and very reluctant about posting. The reason most of them don't have websites is because they're scared of being copied. So I think maybe there needs to be some kind of a trademark for this type of designs, locally they can get for their own designs, you know what I mean? So that needs to be developed, I think. I don't know if there's an association. I know they were working on getting these trademarks and stuff, but I don't know how far they've gotten, but yeah.
I know that the Maasai managed to copyright their, the blanket, the fabric that they use to make blankets. Yeah, they managed to copyright that. And there's actually, there's an African chapter to the World Intellectual Property Organization. It's based in Yaoundé in Cameroon, and you can copyright, you can trademark a certain number of things, but how well can that be enforced afterwards? I mean, if somebody in Zimbabwe copies one of my designs, am I really going to take them to court? Is it going to ever be enforced? Do I want to go through that trouble, or do I just want to carry on? Because you can't avoid being copied.
Can't. Look at the big brands like Gucci, Prada. I mean, they're always being copied, and they can't control it. But you just have to stay true to your own identity and try to brand it so people, I mean, sometimes, I even tell the designers, if you're being copied, it's an honor. That means somebody liked your,
Yeah.
They like, so exactly.
And then it pushes you to always innovate, So when somebody is copying you, just move to the next idea. You need to have more ideas. You need to be always a step ahead of them.
Looking at your path, what were the challenges that you faced? I mean, in this industry, fashion in Africa, it's not that advanced, and you as a woman tackling every stage, what were the challenges or some of the obstacles that you faced? Were you frustrated at one point and wanted to give up, or how was the road?
I'll start as organizing the Fashion Week. I think the initiative, because it was kind of new, it was very accepted. And the challenges mine, I guess, are different than designers as an event organizer, because fashion is not seen as an industry. I still don't think that it's a respected industry, and it should be, because it's money-wise, I mean, what can be generated is big, really. So for us is many. I can't say too much, but yes, there were times like, why am I doing this? Why, people ask me, why are you? Because I'm just promoting. I'm not a designer. I just have the passion for fashion, and I've always liked to promote. And even when I lived in the U.S., I was a fashion editor for an Ethiopian lifestyle magazine called Tadias. Now it's just an online platform. Yeah, so even then I was promoting Ethiopian diaspora, designers in the U.S., giving them to showcase whatever in the magazine. But so it's the passion that drives me still. And there are challenges, of course, but some challenges can be an opportunity, always. So but we're on the 8th edition. No, we're organizing our 8th edition in October. So
you'll tell us more about the coming event later on. Let's go to Hortense.
Well, as a designer, I think that my main challenge is the lack of professionalism of people in this industry, because you can't do everything alone, and you come with your work ethics and with a certain number of goals, but then you have to also take into account other people who are going to supply whatever materials it is that you need. And in Africa, people don't always feel the urgency. They don't always think that a deadline is a deadline. Or that, if I have a collection I need to present in 3 weeks, don't come the day before and tell me, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't, produce whatever it is that you wanted, but I can do it for in the next 2 months, you'll get it. I can't wait 2 months. I need this today or yesterday. So I think that there's this issue of professionalism and deadlines, and you can't really rely on your suppliers, so you always need to have a plan B. What I have found is that if I need maybe brass pieces, I'll make sure that I have at least 2 brass smiths. I'll have maybe one in Abidjan and one in Nairobi. so that if the one in Abidjan falls through, I can turn to the one in Nairobi. The same goes with my fabrics. And I work a lot with artisans. So they work at their own pace. And artisanal work is something you can't also rush. You need to take time. You need to have people who can do the job properly. And you can't really change and switch all the time, but still have a plan B, have at least 2 people who will be able to supply whatever it is that you need. So my main issue is lack of professionalism.
What about now Africans are coming together in all aspects, like the business, the social, Africans are integrating with the continental free trade agreements and everything. So with that, now you guys are at the bottom, at the core of bringing Africans together. You are already doing that, with the Hub of Africa, and you're designing artifacts from different parts of Africa, binding them together. So with this, what kind of change or what kind of inspirations or what kinds of incentives do you expect into the fashion industry?
I think that there's so many opportunities for mixing and blending. The continent is really diverse. There's more than 50 countries. I don't know how many cultures and ethnic groups we have, but every group and every culture has so much wealth. I like to say that Africans are cultural billionaires because we have so much. That's a huge resource that we have. And something that I would like to do in the future, and something that I'm actually working on currently, is more exchanges between Ethiopia and the rest of the continent. So not only for my brand, not only mixing for my products, but I'm going to be bringing in people from West Africa and Southern Africa to begin with, to come and train Ethiopians here in Addis, to give them some marketable skills, such as maybe dyeing or a certain type of weaving, certain types of jewelry making techniques. And then the next step will be to take Ethiopians to other African countries. So there's this kind of cross-fertilization. There's so many possibilities.
So it's like experience sharing, one artisan with the other one.
Exactly.
That's really good. What about Mahale?
The other thing, I think, for the business side, Ethiopia is still behind with e-commerce. I think that can open up a lot of business opportunities within Africa. We're getting there. I was just at an ICT conference a couple of weeks ago, and definitely we're going towards that. Having that, the e-commerce, I think, will play an important role to exchange and be able to sell, and maybe other Africans also sourcing from Ethiopia. We did have some designers that we've invited in the past sourcing leather from Ethiopia, for example, and there are also other Ethiopians mixing fabrics again with Ethiopian and so forth. So, yeah, I think that will also create a lot of business opportunities for the industry.
Okay. What about the fashion platforms? You are organizing Hub of Africa, the Fashion Week, for 8 years now. What about integrating with other fashion platforms in Africa and getting together and organizing a certain kind of event,
I think that is important. I totally agree. For East Africa, I think right now Hub of Africa is the one that's on the map. West Africa has their big platforms, Arise Fashion Week, Lagos Fashion Week, South Africa, the same thing. We have to be able to find a way to liaise together and see how we can work together. There is one person, a designer also, called Adama Paris. She's creating a federation which will connect all of this. She has this brilliant idea that's exactly what you just mentioned, to integrate all these fashion weeks. So that's still in the works. She will be coming this year, so we'll see how far she's gotten. But yeah, there is that platform to connect all the different fashion weeks in Africa.
Okay, now let's go to the catwalk, the actual fashion. Let's start with the models. How do you select models? African way of looking at or appreciating beauty is quite different from the Western. We like a woman that has a full body, not skinny one. So when you select models, or when you put in models to showcase your products or to be on your platform, how do you select them?
It's a good question. I think, that is changing now. It's becoming more inclusive, when it comes to modeling industry. But in the past, we do casting a few months prior to our events. And of course, because the clothing has to look good on the runway, we've gone with the standard, which is the height, you know, and so far we've been selecting, yes, slim, you know, slender looking, and as organizers, that's what we've been showcasing. But there were a couple of designers that wanted full size. Then we also cast for that. If there's a need in 2012, we did. It's been a while, but the event that we organized in 2012 was a bit more inclusive. Like you said, as Africans, we're more full-figured. You know, we're shaped differently than European or U.S. models. But yeah, so far I think we've been casting definitely the height, the look, everything has to go, but it's changing. As it is becoming more inclusive. So even age-wise, you know, I think, because at the end of the day, it's not your 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds only that buy your outfits, you know, there's that age, so it has to, they can relate if a 30 or 40-year-old dressed in that outfit, like, I can wear that too. So it has to be more inclusive, and we will definitely try to make it inclusive this year. But then the designers will also have to make outfits to, you know, to fit, those type of models.
So it's going to be about the right crowd, you know, who's going to wear it in the end. What about you?
Well, actually, in 2017, I went to my first Hub of Africa. I loved it, and that's where I found my model, the face of Afropian, Gelila. She's this beautiful, tall, voluptuous Ethiopian woman. She's absolutely amazing. She's not skinny at all. And yeah, I found her at Hub of Africa. So I tend to mix, actually. I have shorter models, taller models, slender, voluptuous. I'm also very inclusive. I don't want to focus on any kind of, you know, standards or rules or sample size or whatever. It's also an issue of connection and the energy that the person gives me. Do I think that she represents what I stand for as a brand? Does she have, you know, that spirit? It's also about the spirit and the whatever energy the person will exude. And one thing that I find very shocking in Ethiopia, maybe not shocking, but a bit, you know, surprising, is that I've never seen an albino model. And I have been looking for one. I tried, for the past 2 years, I've been looking for an albino model in Ethiopia, and I cannot find one. I had to go all the way to Brazzaville, Congo, to find my albino model. I found an amazing girl who's going to be on my website soon, but it was only in the Congo. So here in Addis, that's also something maybe that could be included, you know, as a...
Okay, what about selecting, it's Hub of Africa, and you said it's including all the Eastern African countries. Do you select models only from Ethiopia, but other neighboring countries?
Yeah, we do. Actually, we've, from the beginning, we've always had, maybe not the first one we didn't in 2010, but since 2012 we've had models from the region, mainly from Rwanda, Kenya, a lot from Kenya. But yeah, we definitely invite some international models as well.
How is it accepted in the continent, in Africa, and internationally, the Hub of Africa? What's the acceptance level? I mean, you might have websites that people go to and check it out, and when you go abroad, if you do some kind of census, how do people feel about Hub of Africa?
You know, that's a good question, because now because we've been consistent, people do know it, you know. Even whenever I go to business offices for a meeting, I'll tell you, when was it? Yesterday I went to an office and I told her, you know, I needed to go to your boss's office, and she's like, where are you from? I said, Hub of Africa. Oh, she knew it. So that means a lot to me. It was just a random place. So definitely locally, it is becoming a respected event.
Not only locally.
Yeah, and
You're
now internationally. Yeah, I am very modest, honestly.
No, it's a
I
big
don't
deal.
think I realized the
It's a big
caliber.
deal.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, and we do have a lot of regional designers wanting to come to participate here. So that tells me that, you know, yeah, definitely. A lot of, like this year, again, we'll have a lot from Kenya, definitely from Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, Morocco, and so forth.
So how many countries will be participating this year?
I can't, maybe about 7 or 8, yeah, at least. We would like to get more, but what we're realizing is a lot of the African regions are having their own platforms, so they are taking part in their own country, you know, but there are so many designers that want to, you know, for the experience sharing and all, you know, for many reasons, that are also interested to come to participate, but yeah.
What do you see in the future in the African fashion industry? How are we going to proceed? Where do we find ourselves in, let's say, 5, 10 years? African designers, African fashion week organizers, the fashion itself. Where is this going to be?
Well, I think that if we play our cards right, like the sky is the limit, because there's so much potential. There's amazing talent in Africa, and the world is hungry for it and is ready for it as well. You have people like Naomi Campbell bringing people into Africa. She has this hashtag on Instagram called Naomi Africa, and she tends to travel around all of these African countries in order to showcase African designers. She's focusing a lot on Nigeria right now. She was in Senegal a couple of weeks ago. I hope she comes to Addis.
I hope so. We've sent just a message on Instagram. I don't know how to reach her, but we would love, hopefully.
She's really promoting. We have so many champions promoting African fashion, and they come. Beyonce is wearing African fashion. I think it was Tracy Ellis Ross as well, Diana Ross's daughter, who decided to wear 10 different African designers at the Emmys or Grammys recently. So people like that are putting us on the map.
Tiffany Haddish.
Tiffany Haddish.
Yes.
Yeah, because she's half Eritrean, I believe, and she's really proud of her heritage. So we have so many champions. And the thing now is that with all of this new exposure, we're going to have to be able to follow through. Because when the exposure comes, that's when the work actually starts. Are you going to be able to fulfill orders? Are you going to be able to produce and maintain your quality? So that's going to be our challenge in the future. But when it comes to our talent and the interest that people have in African fashion, I think there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
We can do it.
We can do anything.
Okay. What about Khaled?
I think she's put, it's really great with what's happening with African fashion, like she said, with all the different champions promoting it, putting it on an international stage. So I'm really happy to see all this happen. I didn't see it coming, when we first started in 2010. It was just an idea that has now 8-9 years later, to see it grow as much as it has. It's amazing.
So that's well and good. I mean, it has come a long way. Like you said, a lot has to be done to promote it. The outside people, they are Naomi Campbell, they are promoting African culture, but we also have to do our assignments to promote our culture, our industry that you have started. So with that being said, if there is anything else that you'd like to say about the fashion industry, what should be done by government, by other stakeholders moving forward? This person has to do this, party has to do this. Anything else, a message that you'd like to put out there?
For us as organizing this event, we need more partners to make it happen, to scale it up, because again, we're always looking for sponsors to organize it. There's a big production cost. As an organizer, I'm just speaking, from my own experience. We just need more partners to make the event even bigger than it is.
There's an amazing platform called Fashionomics Africa. So it's a project by the African Development Bank that tries to promote the textile and fashion industries in Africa, because there's such a huge potential, there's such a huge market worldwide, and Africa doesn't get its fair share. So Fashionomics started, I think, in 2016 or 2017, and they partner with many schools and associations and designers. They bring in investors, they organize these sourcing trips to different African countries. So that's something that designers can tap into, as well as actually even event organizers, because they will bring in funding for those things. So you have different platforms that people need to be aware of their existence, people need to look for them. And I think that one thing also that designers need to do is not only rely on governments or even the private sector. I think that there's a lot that we can do individually at our own level. And I think that the first thing that we can do is try and be as professional as possible. In order to bring in investors, to bring in some interest and people, in order for people to buy whatever it is that you're selling, you have to be professional, there has to be quality, and there has to be consistency.
What about more designers?
And more designers, of course. And there are, by the way, like I said, because there are so many schools and many institutions here in Ethiopia alone. And I think the associations are very important. I don't know about associations other parts of Africa. I know they had one in Kenya. I don't know how active they are, but I think fashion designer associations have a big role also to build the industry.
Could we remind our audience when next Hub of Africa is going to be?
So the next one is October 9 until the 12th. Hortense is also taking part this year. So it's from October 9 to the 12th at the Hyatt Regency Hotel.
Hyatt Regency, October 9th
to the 12th.
To the 12th. Yes. So you have heard it. Don't miss out this year's Hub of Africa that's going to be organized, taking place in Hyatt Regency Hotel.
So we were talking about e-commerce recently, and I think that that's a very interesting avenue for African designers. So I have my own e-shop. I have an online store, so people can find me online at afropian.co. There's also a Facebook and an Instagram page that are very active, Afropian, for people who would like to see what it is that I make or that we make.
So if people are interested in buying Hortense's articrafts that you have made yourself?
Yes, these are two of my rings.
I actually have a piece. I should have worn your piece. I have an earring from her.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's this is a cross, and this is a
design, right?
and this as well. But it was made in Ivory Coast by an amazing brass smith who was very excited to make Ethiopian pieces in Ivory Coast. And that's also part of my brand. It's all of these exchanges and all of this Pan-Africanism, bringing everything together and showing that Africa is just one. That we all, look alike and we all blend beautifully. So I'm trying to bring a message of unity.
Could you tell us about the bracelet as well?
This bracelet it's a mishmash. It's really Afropian. So this cross is, it's a leather cross. It's made by some nuns in southern Ethiopia. They dye it with some kind of a clay, and it's Ethiopian leather. This is copper. This is a bead that I got from Ghana. These are from Ivory Coast. This is an old bead also from Ivory Coast. So there's a bit of a mix of different countries here on my wrist.
So you're surrounded by African countries on your wrist.
Very proudly African. Very happy to wear Africa very proudly.
Okay. Can you tell us about your clothes too, or?
This dress, I had this made by a tailor 3 or 4 years ago. As I was telling you, African fashion back in the day was you sitting at your table at home and designing something, going to the neighborhood tailor and having it made, and he would make it so perfectly. We didn't necessarily have this ready-to-wear African fashion, whatever. So I still have this habit when I'm in an African country of sitting down, designing something, and going to a tailor, and this is what comes out sometimes. This is what comes out of these collaborations.
Sometimes it could go a wrong way, huh?
Sometimes it's not exactly, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one.
Okay, Mahalet also is wearing some African.
Yeah, this also I had it made with a tailor, an Ethiopian tailor, locally made. So again, just looked up some design. I said, can you make me this jacket? I bought the fabric here at the Diplomatic Bazaar, and yeah, that's it.
What about the next?
This one is from here. That's Ethiopian. But I forgot. I think my husband bought this for me. I don't remember from who, but yeah, this is here from Ethiopia as well.
That's really excellent. We have to always be proud of our tradition, and we have to be ambassadors for African fashion, right? So all of us, I'm really ashamed I'm not wearing any African things. So maybe next time I'll do that. I'll do that. That's all we have for you for this week's African View discussion. Till next time, I'm Yodit Admasu.